You all have 7?
Mhm.
Looks
Yeah.
like. Okay, we're going to get started. So my name is Kim Bueller. I'm with the University Career Center. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm part of our winter boot camp. And this panel is affectionately called What Are Employers Looking For Anyway? In the industries of communications and leaders, which typically are journalism and business, HR, fundraising, those kinds of from areas. And so what I have planned for this evening is I have a list of questions that I'd like to ask because, like I said, students don't want to hear from the career coaches. They want to hear from the employers. And we have a number of graduating seniors and that will soon be entering the job market who are nervous about, for obvious reasons, about landing a job. And so we've offered this 3-week series to help them. And as part of that, they want to hear from you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, for those of you who joined a little later, Howard Graham will be joining from the KU Alumni Association. He's the director of the KU Career Network. So I'd like to start off, if you don't mind, by just giving your name. If you could tell me the major that you got as an undergrad, what your title is now, what you currently do. And I'll go ahead and start at the top with Caitlin. You're on the first on the top left. So.
Sure, yeah, of course. Well, my name is Caitlin Unger. I graduated from the J School in 2017. I was on the news and information side, so all of college kind of thought I was going to go into broadcast and reporting, but I actually work in marketing now. So my title is Influencer Marketing Manager, and I work for Octagon, which is a sports and entertainment marketing agency.
Excellent. Paige.
Hi, I'm Paige Hofer. My degree is in education. Graduated in 1990. And I actually work for a company called Sportsman Cap and Bag. This is my little Zoom room. But I'm considered a national educator, but that it really has to do with sales. So I educate on our products, and I travel with sales reps and just educate on our products to, show people why they should buy our products. So basically in sales, but it's been nice to find a way to use an education degree other than just teaching.
Yeah, good. Roshi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roshni Neslage. I graduated from the School of Journalism in 2011, and then I got my MBA from KU as well immediately after. So I graduated from the MBA program in 2013, and I'm currently communications officer at the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. We're a foundation that invests in journalism, in the arts, and in communities across the country. And we're headquartered in Miami, which is where I am now. It doesn't look like I'm in Miami, but I promise you I'm in more Miami. So yeah, my job as communications officer, I'm part of a rather small communications team for a foundation our size. And like Caitlin, I was actually in news and info. I actually interned at a large newspaper after graduating from college, and then immediately went into communications marketing and back to get my MBA. So I do media relations, work a lot on like developing press releases. I actually also manage all of our social media accounts, which in the foundation world tends to be a higher up position. And do our website, all sorts of digital marketing, but also old-fashioned marketing. That's not the term, and I can't think of the term right now. I'm sure someone else on this call knows the term. Both digital and non-digital.
All I could think of was analog, which is not true. Yeah, we know what you mean. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin Curtis Dirks, and I graduated from the journalism school in '97. And I graduated with a degree that I don't think exists anymore, technically, broadcast management. So I think they've redone everything and it's something else now, or it was morphed into something. But at the time, it was kind of like if you wanted to run a radio station or do promotions for a radio or TV station. And I didn't start out in that because I sort of jumped around in the J school and tried out probably 3 different majors, but love that I graduated with that. And currently work at Firesign Marketing, which is a small marketing agency out of Kansas City. And we really just handle law firms and legal tech. So we're one of very few in the nation that does it, which is really fun. It's very niche, and I love it. So I am senior accounts director, but we are very small. We have 4 people, so we all wear a million hats. So I'm kind of in charge of business development and client relations, but I also do just a lot of content marketing and whatever needs to be done, project management. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Excellent. And I want to say if you have any questions, since you can put it in the chat or we'll have some questions at the end. But I wanted to know, we've got students that will be graduating in May and some have already graduated who are looking for their job. Wondered if you could give any advice to students who are beginning their search. What would be your greatest piece of advice that you would give them? It's a very scary time entering in the workplace right now. So anyone can jump in.
Well, I would say to keep an open mind and not just like have one job that they're focused on, but just to kind of keep an open mind and know your skill set, but be able to use those skills across and have an open mind of how your skill set can fit into different types of jobs, and always have good written communication. I know a lot with social media and texting and everything, people abbreviate everything and all that. Just really good to have good written skills, and then also be able to speak face to face as well. Those are just some of my things off the top of my head.
I would say make sure you really utilize your connections. So networking, sometimes it's uncomfortable, even if you're an extra or an introvert, or if you're an extrovert. I'm an extrovert. It's still uncomfortable to have to go out there and really network and find those people, but it really makes a huge difference. And just having coffee with people that you may have crossed paths with, you have no idea truly who's going to help you out. So I would say to make a list of people that, even if you've only hung out with them once or twice or connected with them, if they have some way of helping you, just sit down with them and have coffee and talk. I've had so many opportunities pop up because of that. So just keep a healthy networking circle, and don't be afraid to do it. Don't be gun shy. So.
Yeah, Erin, I think the first thing that popped into my head is very similar of networking and using your connections. I think a simple post on LinkedIn or even Facebook, like, hi, I'm looking for a job in this market, I got my degree in this, or I'm interested in this. You just never know what connections you already have, or of people who can connect you to someone else in the industry, and even just have that conversation, just open that door initially. But I think we're at a spot where technology can help you as much as you let it. So definitely, make a post on LinkedIn, or never hesitate to make a connection with someone, even if you feel like it's small. I think it can pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think every job that I've gotten since graduating from graduate school, minus my first job, was because of a connection or someone who I networked with. And that actually brings me to the point that I wanted to add, which is that your first job or even your first couple jobs aren't going to define you. I think oftentimes, like when I was in the job search process, I was so hesitant to take a job that wasn't on the trajectory that I thought I wanted. But by taking jobs that I didn't think I wanted, I learned a lot, and I was able to confirm whether or not that was actually something that I wanted to do. And it opened up a lot of opportunities. And like Erin and Caitlin have both said, allowed me to network as well. So my first job was selling cruises for a Norwegian cruise line. I was a telemarketer because I moved to Miami with my husband, and it was a terrible job. Maybe, I don't know if this is going to be posted on the internet. Maybe I'm not going to say that. It was a job that I wasn't well suited for, calling strangers, but I learned a lot that I was actually able to apply to other jobs in the future.
The important thing is you get a free cruise.
Yeah, we did actually.
Okay, good. You don't want to go through all that not to get a free cruise. You made a good point about not having your first job be your dream job, and I think that's kind of a misconception that many students have, that they're going to go in and get their dream job right away. What was your first jobs? I was interested. Erin, what was your first job and how did you get it?
You know, it's funny. My first job was not my dream job, but I also made so many connections through that job. And two of my absolute best friends to this day are from that job. So I have no complaints. It was at Katz. It's a defunct company now. They were headquartered out of New York and they had a satellite office in Kansas City. So I worked downtown, lived downtown, made like peanuts. And it was Katz Media. So it was a media buying agency. And I had a journalism degree. To your point, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to run a radio station. Ended up not being the case down the road. I wasn't interested in that. But my advisor at the time at KU connected me with the manager of the Katz office in Kansas City, who was a KU graduate. So total KU all the way. I got the job because it was awesome. She was looking for a KU graduate. We connected. It was entry level sales assistant job at a media company that basically worked between ad agencies and TV and radio stations and helped connect them. And we did negotiations. It was not what I wanted to do, and I quickly realized that. But I stayed there for a year and a half because I met some really cool people and I made some amazing connections. And then I moved, not to keep going and going, but that job really helped me when I moved to Chicago, which is what I did next, in finding a job there. So that's why I think connecting and networking is so key. Even if it's not the job that you get into and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not what I want to do. It's okay.
Excellent.
You're young. You can get great skills from it. I learned negotiation skills, if nothing else. I learned I don't want to be in sales, but I also learned how to negotiate, and I had never really done that. So that was kind of my first job.
Excellent. But Paige or Caitlin?
My first job, as I said, I had an education degree. My first job was actually teaching, which I enjoyed tremendously. And then I did take some time and I stayed home with my kids when they were young. And then I worked part-time when they were growing up. But then when I was coming back into the workforce, I had an opportunity at the KU Alumni Association to work with the KU students. And so with my again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have your skill set, you don't know what jobs that it might lead you to. So my education degree also brought me into my job at KU Alumni Association. And then when I went into sales, that also helped me, as I kind of mentioned how sales is about educating on what you're selling, basically. So that's kind of how my job path has taken me a little bit. And I really enjoy what I do now.
Excellent. Anybody else? You know, it's interesting.
I'm happy to go.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry, Kim. I was just going to say I'm happy to go next. I actually still work at the agency that I started at post-grad. So I graduated in 2017. And I knew I wanted to work in sports and entertainment, and I knew it was such a competitive industry to get into. So I just wanted to find something to get my foot in the door, you know, anyway. And so there's actually a fellowship that's offered through Octagon for KU grads. It's called the Tom Murphy Fellowship. And so that's kind of how I got my start at the agency. And it was a 6-month contract fellowship where I got to just kind of try out different areas of the agency, work under different accounts, and kind of see what sparked my interest. And so I feel really lucky to have had that opportunity. But how I actually received my full-time position there was on the new business team. And so that was definitely a different side of the business that I didn't feel as passionate about, but I knew because I was working in the space, the categories that I wanted to be in, that it was still an opportunity that I wanted to, you know, take and run with. And then about a year later, there was an opening on our digital strategy team working with influencer marketing. And so I've been doing that for the past 2 years. And you know, from what other people have said, I totally agree. Like, change is inevitable. And I don't know if I will be working with influencers for the majority of my career. Who knows how long influencer marketing will actually last? I think people definitely have opinions about it one way or another. But I think from a digital marketing standpoint, that's something very long lasting. And I'm obviously excited to see where my career will take me from here.
You know, it's interesting that you all were talking about the networking, and I want to introduce Howard Graham, who's a director of our KU network. I'm glad you're here, Howard. He was on following up the rest of the previous panel. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about networking, but what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know, based on what you all are saying and landing some of those first jobs out of school. And but I did want to ask, you know, there are some skills that I'm sure that students would like to know. What skills should I have when I graduate, when I'm going for a job or in a certain field, especially in communications fields or selling? What are some of the skills that you think they should be able to bring to the table, and how that maybe has helped you?
Well, I kind of mentioned a couple that I thought earlier, just as we were talking earlier. Just the written skill set is still important, especially even in like email communication and things like that. And then also being able to have a conversation face to face, and just have confidence in yourself and ability to talk to someone. And then I think in sales also, one thing that I know is knowing your product and really spending extra time, you know, on whatever you're selling, whatever it might be. I'm in the promotional product industry, but just really being able to explain what you're selling is a great skill set too.
I think just confidence is, I love that you said that, because that's hard to have when you're younger. I don't know. I mean, I'm not young, and I'm still working on that. But I think if you can be confident as you can be in your interviews, I think that's key, without obviously coming off as too confident. You want to be open-minded and let them know that you, you know you're open to learning and trying new things and evolving, but a level of confidence is, I think, really important. I think just being able to have a conversation, which I know every personality is different, but just being able to sit down and just talk to somebody and have a conversation goes so far. When I'm interviewing people, that's what I look for. Just because that says a lot about a person, I think, if they can talk with ease, and just, yeah, kind of a work ethic. I don't know if you can explain that in an interview, but just make sure you try to communicate that you have a great work ethic, because that's 100% of what it is. So
Excellent.
Yeah, I just add on to both of those things with just be a sponge, especially in your first year out of school. I think if you can show that you're willing to just soak up everything and continue learning and then apply that to whatever job you're hired for, it's going to really impress your team, your manager, and show that you're really just excited to learn and to be a part of the team and the business.
Yeah, I also have a couple of thoughts. I was writing them down as people were talking, but I think a big one that I've noticed that I really wish more of my colleagues or people who I work with had is attention to detail. I think especially coming from a communications field, that's something that's so critical, and missing a detail can oftentimes make a huge difference in what's being conveyed. And so don't have any typos in your resume, don't have any typos in cover letters, or even just in emails that you're sending to people. Like, read it 10 times or read it out loud a couple times. Usually that can help you catch typos. And then I think just, Kim, when you were asking about other skills, I was just thinking of things that like I would want to see on a resume if I was looking for someone in communications. I think especially with the age group of people who are looking for jobs now, or who's the audience, digital is something that you guys can bring to the table that even people my age or higher might not have as much acumen in. And so I think really emphasizing your digital acumen, explaining, where your strengths are on the digital side could really potentially set you apart, or at least make a case for hiring you, for interviewing you. And also, like, if you're going into a job, as Paige said, that needs strong writing skills, actually submitting writing samples or portfolio can actually show your skills in action and just, again, set you apart. And so as you're looking for pieces to put together, you know, sometimes if I remember correctly, I think probably even some essays for college or clips that I had from the Kansan or anything like that was part of the portfolio of things that I submitted as I was applying for jobs. And then also just piggybacking off of what Caitlin said, I think something that I really like to see in colleagues is someone who's a quick thinker. So not only a sponge, but can like take something and apply it quickly. So that comes with experience. And again, it's kind of hard to convey on a resume or an application, but it's something that people can notice as you're working with them and could help advance you to the next position as well.
I love the samples example. That's super important. As somebody who's hired people, I love it when the job obviously calls for it. If somebody proactively comes with samples, it really, I mean, obviously if they're decent samples, but that makes a difference. And I would add problem solving. Just, I don't know how you convey that either, but if you can somehow convey that you're a problem solver and you're open to that, that's huge too. And you're not somebody that just constantly asks how to fix something. You actually try to figure out how to fix it first. So those are things I kind of look for, but I know that's harder to convey again in like an application, but things to just think about as you're interviewing and talking about yourself.
Yeah, oftentimes employers will ask like, what's a challenge that you've faced that you've had to handle? And like, that's ultimately what they're looking for. They're not looking necessarily for a good story, but they're trying to see or flesh out if you're a good problem solver or how you handle challenges.
Right, exactly.
Being a team player too, being able to work with others, and you know, if you have an example of that, you know, working with others and being a team player.
Excellent.
Kim, this is Howard. I apologize for being late, everyone. I was on the artists, designers, and performers Zoom call, which went a little long. And so Kim and I split. Please excuse me, but I'm happy to be here. And I jumped on, and one of the things that struck me right away is that whether it's communicators and leaders, artists, designers, or performers, or whatever career community we meet with later, there's already some overlap in terms of what you all are suggesting and what our trumpet player just suggested and what our architect just suggested and what, you know, the person who works for the Kauffman Foundation just suggested. Working on writing, paying attention to detail. And Caitlin, the story that you shared said, oh, I got my foot in the door and I took the job that was available. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but eventually I moved over. There was some of that as well in that earlier panel. I'm thinking, Kim, of Melanie, who's an architect. And she was like, well, I took a job when I was a student at KU measuring bathrooms for the design and management team. And it really wasn't what I wanted to do, but it put me in a position for this other opportunity afterwards. And so I think that those are really important. Again, I apologize for being late. There is a question from a student, Kim, in the chat. So Haley, if you can hear me and want to join in and ask your question, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself before you ask your question, please.
Perfect. Well, I'm a senior this year, so I'll be graduating in May. However, I'm studying marketing and sales, and then I have a minor in Spanish. So I'm kind of hoping to go something along the marketing and international route. However, my question was, when you kind of notice on a job that you have the hard skills you need, do you guys have any tips on reaching out on platforms like LinkedIn, what you should ask those connectors over the jobs you would like?
Good question.
Just to repeat your question, Haley, to make sure I'm understanding. So when you find like a job that you're interested in applying for and you reach out to your network on LinkedIn or wherever, what is the advice that we would give to you in terms of like how you should craft your message? Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
Yeah, probably like crafting a message to my connections, or if not, maybe reaching out to someone on LinkedIn that already has a job at that firm or something to kind
Is
of.
it considered appropriate is what you're saying? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of students are nervous about reaching out to people to ask that they say, well, gee, we don't even know who you are, or they feel a little funny about it. So as kind of an informational interview, what kinds of things would you recommend asking to learn more about that position? And to go a little further, maybe what are some of the pet peeves that you don't want to ask that are really not appropriate to ask?
Yeah, this actually just recently happened to not me, but one of my teammates.
Okay.
And so this candidate was based out of California and saw a position open at Octagon. And so reached out to my colleague just for that informational interview. I absolutely don't think it's not correct to reach out to people who work at the company you want to apply for a job at. I wouldn't necessarily reach out to the VP or the CEO because you're probably not going to get a response, but you probably already know that too. So maybe try and find someone who you think might work on that same team, or maybe kind of a little bit broader. Maybe you can tell they work in like creative or communications or PR. And just let them know that you're interested, let them know that you've applied to the position, and you'd love to see if they have maybe 15 minutes just to connect, whether it be through Messenger or through a call, just so that you can learn more about the position and make sure that what you're applying for is actually something that would be suitable for both parties. Because of course it should always be mutually beneficial. I will say this candidate who reached out to my colleague, you could tell that all he wanted to do was make a connection and have her reference him to the hiring manager. And she could tell that too, and they only spoke for 15 minutes. And so I would definitely avoid any sort of, conversation that would make it seem like you're just using that person to get a reference. Have it be a little bit more of a meaningful conversation. Not necessarily, can you please recommend me for this job, but what can I do to make sure I'm able to get an interview and go through the process? Is probably how you'd want to position it.
And
Thank you.
yeah, I would just add really quick. That's my husband actually got his job that way years ago. He reached out, to the way he did it, and this is ideal, I think, if you know someone that knows someone who works there. So he had a friend who had a friend that worked at this company. So that helped him get an in, but he didn't go to the CEO or VP. He went to, as a company out of Kansas City, a big software company. He said, hey, reached out informationally and said, I'm very interested. And I think also what served him, not only kind of knowing somebody, being able to drop a name, but he researched the company, and he really, really wanted to work for the company, specifically that company. It wasn't just, casting a wide net and saying that to a million places. He really had picked out like a few companies, and that was one of them. And so he had done his research, and he really said that in his outreach, is that, hey, I love this company. It looks really cool. I connect with it. This is why. And he did his research and really explained why he thought he would be a good fit. So it wasn't just a generic sort of outreach. And he happened to know someone, which kind of helped. But really, I think it was just that, earnest sort of outreach. And it ended up working out. I mean, he got like an entry-level sales position years ago, but he's done really well and he likes it a lot. So it does work, I think, depending on how you craft the message and how you do it. And as long as it's earnest and you do your research, I think it's a good idea. And if it's not to someone like an executive or someone at the company, if you do it to like a group, I think it's important to just approach it in the same way. Like, hey, I'm really interested in this kind of work or this company. Here's my information. I would love it if you have any connections. Let me know. I'd love to talk to you. Or I think that's absolutely fine. And it shows that you're putting in the work,
Thank you.
Right, Roshni, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first of all, like, I would like to ditto everything that Caitlin and Aaron just said. But also I think the KU network in particular can also be just like a helpful place to make connections. So kind of like what Aaron was saying, friends of a friend. I know in both my undergraduate program in the journalism school and the graduate program in the business school that I was a part of, the staff there were really critical in trying to help me make connections. So I got my internship after college because of one of the professors in the journalism school. Or once I knew I was going to move to Miami with my husband, a lot of people in the business school made attempts to make contacts with KU alumni in Miami. And I actually had a couple informational interviews and just conversations because people were excited to help someone from KU. So depending on where you're looking to move, actually, no matter where you're looking to move, I think the KU connection is strong, and you currently have resources that you can use to advance that. And then answering Kim's question about pet peeves, I think I have had just a couple people reach out to me and say, who I don't know, but might be a friend of a friend, and just pretty much straight up via email ask for me to be a reference for them or ask for me to pass on their resume. And so usually, like, if I do, I'll do it kind of with an asterisk next to it to whomever the hiring manager is and say, I don't know this person, but this is a friend of a friend. So like, I can't speak up for this person, when in fact, like, a coffee or a Zoom call now in 2021 or whatever probably would make a bigger difference for me to say, okay, hey, I talked to this person, he or she is great, and I think you should consider them.
And then that just goes back to don't be afraid to reach out and talk to people. So yeah, you guys covered the question perfectly. So I was just.
Kim, can I jump in a little bit?
Of course, Howard.
Haley, if you're not on mentoring.ku.edu, the KU mentoring platform, several of the panelists are on mentoring. It is, I describe it sometimes as a Jayhawk LinkedIn. It's a localized LinkedIn. It's a place to connect with other Jayhawks alum. We should go over 8,000 users in the next month or so, and it's growing really rapidly. So I would suggest you go there. So that's the world I'm in, right? Is I oversee that platform. It's where I met Roshni. It's where I met Caitlin, and so I spend a lot of time on like podcasts and what industry news is on networking and things like that. And actually, the Harvard Business Review Idea Cast, which is amazing, I recommend it to everybody. They just did a piece with an expert on networking, and ditto everything that was said. And one of the things that they suggest, and I think it's particularly applicable for somebody in your that's a senior, in college, is maybe start networking outside of a job search. And identify people on the mentoring platform or on LinkedIn or wherever you are who you have an interest in what they do. Maybe they studied the same thing that you're studying. Maybe they work at a business that you're curious about, regardless if there are any job openings. And, try to start a relationship in that way, because that is in some ways a lot more authentic than I think what like Roshni was explaining in the example that she just used. And so I think authenticity is really important anywhere. I think authenticity in networking is super important. So maybe start with like, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in. Set the job aside for a second and just see who's out there that you can pick their brain, that you can, maybe start a connection with, that again is like driven from that authenticity space rather than driven from a job need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
And Haley, take advantage of our connections tomorrow, where we're going to help people find connections through KU mentoring from 3 to 5 tomorrow. So it's on the team's website. Are there some other questions, Howard, that you're seeing?
There's one. If Scott is out there, and I think this is a question particularly maybe for Paige, but others, whether this is your experience or not, may have something to say based on maybe colleagues in this situation. Here's Scott. Go ahead, Scott. Tell us a little about yourself first.
So I'm Scott Watson. I'm actually coming to you from Colorado. So when you were all thinking about 7 o'clock, I was like, oh no, my clock says 6. So I got my bachelor's in music education here in Denver, and then I got my master's from KU in curriculum and instruction. So really, like, I identified with Paige, but I'd like to know kind of what anybody else has to say, kind of more of a a transition, what you would look for from a transition standpoint if you were looking at somebody who was coming from another career field, what qualifications, what anything you would be looking for, or even Paige, what strategies you use to jump from the classroom into another career field.
Well, and as I came back into going from part-time to full-time, I also worked at Edward Jones for a little bit and did the financial world, and realized that I wasn't made for that. And then when the KU job came along, again, just being familiar, I think one of the main things is, really know your skill set. In education, you're managing students. So you have a management, you're planning out curriculum, you're collaborating with other teachers. I mean, you have so many different skill sets. I mean, you think on your feet as a teacher, you answer questions, there's so many different skills that come with it. That transfer into other fields tremendously. And then, like I said earlier, sales is really educating. It's educating on products. It's educating on whatever you're selling. So just focus on some of those skill sets and then think outside the box. I enjoy going on LinkedIn sometimes and just looking at the jobs. I love my job, but I like to look at jobs and just like, what's out there, and how would my skill set fit into those different areas? So think outside the box, but know your skill set. Those are just kind of some of the things that I would say as a teacher going into other fields.
I would agree with that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, because there's other fields that you could go into for sure.
Yeah, I personally I've always stayed somewhat in the same field, whether it's marketing or promotions or PR or a little bit of sales. So I haven't really gone too far out. I feel like I'm using my husband a lot as an example, but he comes to mind. He jumped he kind of managed a radio station at KU for a while and wanted to get into sales. And he had to kind of do that where he's like, how do I look for a job when I don't have the technical sales background, but I really want to do it? And he was really worried about that. And I guess I would go back to what she said, which is look at your skill set. And he really tried to sell his skill set. And in interviews, he talked about that a lot. So I think just going back to what your core skill set is and seeing what you do at your job, there's so many things that you can pull from any job that could apply to what you're looking for. I think there's very few jobs that you can't go, hey, I could do this because I did this here and I have this skill set and I'm really great at problem solving and I'm very detail oriented. And like you said, selling is really educating, and so you can make the connection. You just have to really kind of think how to do it and how to sell yourself when you're talking to them, and connect the dots so that they know you're thinking of that, because that's impressive to the person hiring. Like, oh, he's really thought about this and he isn't just, hey, I want to try sales, but that, I think that can really work. And again, it's kind of back to Howard's point. It's authentic. It shows that you're really trying to kind of make that switch.
Not just any radio station, Erin. Let's everybody knows what radio station we're talking about here. Let's give it its due.
It was an awesome job. He loved it. And honestly, he was a kid in a candy store and would still be doing it. But he wanted to try sales. So he was the KJHK general manager for a while. So, but again, it was that whole, how do I do sales? This is, nobody's hiring a general manager from a radio station, it's a college radio station, but they did. And I think a lot of it was, again, because of just really kind of going back to his core portfolio of skill set and seeing what can I apply and how can I, and to your point, being a sponge and being open. He was like, I'll start from the beginning. I don't mind. Like, I've never done this before. Hire me and I'll show you. And I think having that kind of personality too, being open-minded. So
yeah, just that like willingness to learn. Like
exactly.
we just had a similar situation because our team was hiring a director for our influencer marketing team. And Scott, I know this isn't directly related to you. But influencer marketing is pretty new. I mean, like over the past 10 years, it's grown so much, and it's so much different than it was even 5 years ago. And so when you're looking for someone at that director level, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the candidates don't necessarily have the direct like influencer marketing experience. They've maybe worked with celebrities in the past, or they've maybe worked with sponsorships or larger partnerships that have had celebrities or, high level talent involved, but they haven't necessarily had the hard influencer marketing skills that we were looking for. But I think when we were interviewing candidates, it was more like, tell us what you know about influencer marketing and show us that you're willing to learn and grow from the team, even coming in at that director level. So when we did have those candidates who maybe didn't have as much direct experience, they knew digital, but they didn't know influencer as well. It was really just that willingness to learn and take the position and run with it in the first, month or 3 months.
Kim, can I ask a question too, which is
Yeah.
prompted by a couple things going on here, and then also personal experience, which is some of the businesses, at KU that I've worked with. This is actually not my experience with the Alumni Association right now. Paige, I want you to repeat that to whoever you know in communications there, which is that a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, they have these traditional bureaucracies or setups, right? And then digital communications comes up as a field or an asset in the last 15 years. And so in my experience, a little bit, digital communications, sometimes organizations have a hard time integrating digital communications throughout the entire organizational setup. That's my experience a little bit, where it's like, someone will do something and then thinking about how to communicate that through digital assets is an afterthought, or there's a disconnect between this office and that office. And I'm suspecting that is a fairly common experience in some business types and organizations. Caitlin, maybe not with Octagon. Roshni, I see you shaking your head. So maybe with the John L., the foundation that you work with. What's the reality for like a senior in marketing, strategic communications that enters the job force and is going to work on social media, maybe work with influencers, they're, working on the digital assets of an organization. What can they expect out there right now in terms of some of the challenges that an entry level employee might encounter in that space? I hope that made sense. I wasn't trying to, denigrate anything, just like, oh, sometimes I feel like it's these systems are set up and then this new thing got introduced and it still hasn't found its way to all the different corners yet. And I think for some students that might be a surprise.
Yeah, if I can answer, I think that is a really good point. I think so prior to working at Knight Foundation, I actually worked for several years on the communications team for the Community Foundation here in Miami. So I feel like the bulk of my experience has been in the philanthropic world. I would say oftentimes what I found both in smaller organizations and in the larger organizations is that people often think of communications and marketing as a service department. So like you'll see the finance team or the HR team tend to be more in service of the employees and their work when they get to a certain point. And we've really had to position ourselves in both of these jobs as a strategic partner. So as you're working on strategic communications, you have two jobs. One is the obvious job, which is to communicate strategically to the outside world about the work you and your colleagues are doing. But your job before that is to learn how to communicate with your colleagues about what you bring to the table and why they need to have you involved at step A of a project versus bringing you in at step C or step Z sometimes. So oftentimes what we'll find is that, let's say someone's just working on a project. I'll try to be as ambiguous as possible and not go into like philanthropy speak. But if you're just working on a project and, as a strategic communicator, you can think of you can find holes in things really quickly. You can think of how the press might take something and angle it, or even just if someone was opening up an application for money, or let's say from our foundation, you can help think of questions that people might have that someone like in the weeds of the project might not be able to think about. And so I've seen in both of my jobs when we're brought in too late, how the whole project kind of has to take several steps back. But again, that's when you can start to sell yourself to your colleagues outside of your department or outside of communications and say, you know, this is why, like, this is evidence for why our team can be your partner in this, and we can work with you in developing the strongest project possible, so that when it comes time to introduce it to the public, it's ready to go and it's effective and it does what we want it to do. And again, I'm trying to talk at a high ambiguous level, so there's probably different ways to apply that, but I think that's how I'd answer that.
I love that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you're like, oh, you've got two jobs. There's the external communication, but there's also the internal communication, so that those other stakeholders understand the value you can bring to a project. That's it. You hit that on the nail on the head, so to speak. Anyone else with the experience or thoughts to come in after that?
Mine would have to do with, so again, as we do promotional products. And so there's always we're always bringing in new styles of things and things like that. And so like our part of our communication is having those of us who are out is making sure we know what all's new. And then when we take it to our distributors who are selling it to their customers, so there's this whole line of people that's going through, we all need to be informed along the way, because the ones that we talk about are the ones that sell the best. So just it's just a different view of it, you know, knowing what's new, being able to communicate what's new, and make sure that it gets all the way through to the end customer in my job. That was just another take on it, you know, knowing what's going on from what comes in to what you're selling to, if everyone has learned about all the products.
The whole process, yeah.
Excellent. If there aren't any other questions, I
don't see any.
okay. That's just, it's been so informative. And I think where a lot of students, they're very worried about entering this marketplace, getting out in the world, and they hear about there's the economy's bad, we're in this recession, who knows what's going to happen. What is the outlook from your perspective in your industry? I keep telling students there are jobs out there. How do you see the foreseeable future in the next few months, and say by May? What if you had I know you don't have a globe or you can't look right in there, but what do you see happening within your industries?
I don't want to take, I'll just say the promotional product industry is definitely, we did pivot, and we still do. We also are doing PPE. So our industry is actually doing really well. So the promotional product industry is just something to keep in mind for sales. If anyone's looking into sales, that's something, all different companies across all different types of companies sell promotional products. So just something to keep in mind.
Marketing agencies are hiring. I know that. So I work for a small one that's very specific to our clientele. But even then, we had our best year this past year, strangely enough. Lawyers are still working, and those are who our clients are. So we've had a good year, but outside of law firm marketing, I know marketing agencies and marketing companies are hiring, because I have a lot of friends working in various areas. So I would say don't get discouraged. Things are going to look different. You might have to do your first and second interview through Zoom, but but people are hiring and people are pivoting because everybody has to pivot and adapt. And so it may not be exactly, this is an example. My cousin who just graduated from college last year got a job in San Francisco as a graphic designer. And he currently lives in Omaha. And they said, we're going to have you stay in Omaha and just work remotely for the first year. And then we might move you out here. But he got a great job and he's getting, it's an awesome job. He's just physically not there yet. So, but they're hiring, people are hiring. So I would say just, try not to get discouraged because that's not a problem, at least in our area.
Yeah, I agree with Erin. From like sports and entertainment marketing standpoint, we started hiring again as well. We definitely did have to put a halt on hiring last year, which was sad. But we're up and running again. We're hiring for positions. We do a lot of event-based marketing, and even some of that is starting to pick back up, which is awesome. And then kind of to Erin's point about being remote, that's just such an awesome opportunity for you guys, because there might be, jobs that you typically wouldn't apply for because it's based somewhere where you wouldn't necessarily want to relocate to. But I think the trend will be for a lot of these positions, and specifically in marketing and communications, where we can do this anywhere in the world, will start to be more remote. So I think honestly, like, there might be even more opportunities as we progress more into 2021 for those remote positions to open up.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I've seen jobs open up, not only in my industry with philanthropy, but also in communications. I would say when I graduated, both from undergrad and graduate school, I felt like I was having trouble finding jobs, and I realized, like, jobs to apply to, and I realized it's because I was searching for the wrong job titles. Because I knew, like, I had an idea of the kind of job I wanted to do, but I was calling it something else when I was actually entering it into search engines. And so I think if you're struggling to find something that's a fit, maybe either like rethink what you're searching for. That's another good opportunity to kind of put your networking hat on and talk to people in the industry and help, like, get a good understanding for the type of job you want to do and what it might be called. Because even like in the philanthropic field, what we call certain jobs isn't going to directly translate to the journalism field, or isn't going to directly translate to marketing, even if the core functions of the job are the same. So that would just be advice to answer. I think Kim asked that question of, like, if someone is saying they can't find a job. And then just one note I wanted to make about networking too, that I was just thinking of, I think when Erin was talking, networking is so much of the clear answer to a lot of these questions, and I don't see enough people do it. I see very few people do it. And this is, like, especially if you're not seeing a lot of job options, when you see one, like, network. I don't know what to say. Like, network like there's no tomorrow, because people aren't doing it. And so if you want to stand out, and if the job field is more competitive, that's how you get there. I think, like, all of us have had great examples of seeing networking work out well, but there's so many people, there's hundreds of people that apply for jobs that aren't networking, that are just applying blind, hitting submit and walking away and not doing anything about it. So if you want the job, you got to network.
That they say there's 150 to 200 for every job that resumes that's submitted for every job there is. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I just want to give a quick story about that exact thing. I had a student that came to me that wanted to work for the Wall Street Journal. And I said, who do you know there? And she said, absolutely nobody. And I said, do you know anybody who knows somebody? She couldn't really think. And I said, we got on the mentoring.ku platform. We found an alum who worked for the Wall Street Journal. And I said, I want you to reach out to him. She said, I can't do that. I can't do it. I said, we're going to do it right now. We're going to write an email, going to reach out to him. She texted me 3 hours later and said, you're not going to believe this. The gentleman that I called said, I'm so glad you reached out. I'm responsible for finding some people from my alma mater, and you're the only one that's reached out to me. And guess where she worked? She worked at the Wall Street Journal.
I love it. I have
It's
goosebumps.
it's a
I
very
know.
cool story. And I think it really sums up what each and every one of you are talking about. Networking really is the key. And it's scary for students. And so I'm glad you brought up some of the do's and don'ts. I think students think that they don't have time, or they're too high up, or they look like they're schmoozing. Networking feels like a dirty word, right? But I think it's a two-way street, and you never know when you can give back to somebody. So it's so exciting to hear you all talk about it. And like I said, they want to hear it from you, but we all know, having been in the professional world, that's the kind of key to getting that first job and also moving up in the world. So.
And the KU connection is so real and so magical. Like, it's crazy.
Yes.
People love hiring people. If you went, it's just, I think it's with any alma mater thing, but it's just, I've found in my career, it's amazing. If you can find that connection, it's like, oh,
That's just the Jayhawks.
pays dividends.
Let me
It's amazing though. It's like, yeah. So
before we sew up, let me put a plug in. Kim and I, for students out there, we are going to be on a Zoom tomorrow. That it's a pop-in Zoom. Come in, leave at your convenience. It's from 3 to 5 o'clock. You can find the information in the Winter Boot Camp registration. It's called Establishing Connections, and all we're going to do is show you how to use the mentoring platform to reach out to people that are on the mentoring platform, so you can begin to make those connections. I reached out to somebody recently that is the CEO of a global pharmaceutical company, Jayhawk, and lives in Europe, has lived all over Europe, and lives in Europe. And they just got back to me today and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you sent me this. No, I really want to give back to the university, and so to connect with students." And so here you have somebody who's at the top of their business, who's like, "I've got the time, here it is, connect with me." And so before we leave, I want to say thank you to all of y'all. I think Kim's got some final things, but I'll take my last shot here and just say thank you for agreeing to do this, and thanks for being on the mentoring platform. If you're on the mentoring platform, I've really enjoyed my own interactions with you all there, and this has been terrific. I'll turn it back to Kim.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to meet you, and I hope you realize how valuable this is to our students, and we just really appreciate you taking time after work to meet with us. And we're going to put this on our website, and I can guarantee you we're going to get 1 million hits on it. And we just appreciate you being here. So please join us for tomorrow, students, for the day 2 of boot camp. We've got lots of different resources and short videos that you can watch to help with your job search. But once again, we thank you, panelists, for being here, and I hope you have a good rest of the evening. Rock chalk.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you too. Coming from a student, this panel was very useful and very helpful for the search.
good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Haley. And thank you, Scott, for your comments. Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.